Okay, the recording in progress. Infrastructure as a code with Terraform, and I will be, using this outline to take the session, introduction, talking about, HCL, which is Terraform configuration language itself. Talk about, Terraform configuration directory. We talk about the commands, and I also, probably we take an exercise on, cloud resource provisioning, and I will also take you through Terraform modules and what a module entail and so on like that. So that is, that is the scope of today's what's it called, today's session. And I would like you to be, to be attentive, and at the same time, try to ask questions where necessary. That is what we are going to do today. Okay. So I will start with the first part, which is the introduction. And basically, I believe that we'll all have been hearing about, infrastructure as code, infrastructure as code, infrastructure as code. And we like, okay, what's infrastructure as code? What does it entail? And so on like that. And I've actually just given us, a simple explanation here, or a simple definition of what infrastructure as code entails. And infrastructure as code is basically, a way of managing your resources, your computers, your servers, through, through configuration, what configuration, like is through command line or through codes. And you have, a lot of tools that you can actually use for this. And when I'm talking about tools, we have tools like, Puppet, we have tools like Ansible, we have tools like Terraform and CloudFormation. And, you can also see Google Cloud Deployment Manager and so on. Now, the interesting thing about it is that every one of these tools fall into different categories of infrastructure as a code. What do I mean by different categories of infrastructure as a code? Okay, when we talk about different categories, the first one is that the first categories are what we call configuration management tools. These are tools that were actually used to, to install packages, to do some network configuration and so on. And then we have tools like Ansible and so on for that. We have tools that, are effective when it comes to resource provisioning, or let me say um, resource provisioning, like you have what do you call it, cloud formation, we have Terraform, and and so on. So that is just like, a brief of, some of the categories that we have. And we have some other tools that they are kind of, I don't know how to best categorize them. I'm talking about, tools like Docker. We are talking about, Kubernetes, talking about Vagrant. These are also, some other tools that also has to do with, infrastructure as a code. And for Terraform basically allows you to provision resources, and you can actually manage your resources throughout the entire life cycle. And I mean by entire life cycle, I basically mean that, from the provisioning to updating the resources up to, up to the, what do you call it, the destroying the resources. And Terraform has its own configuration language that it uses. You get, I believe that, we have different configuration language, just like the way we have, Python, we have C Sharp, we have, Java and so on. For Python, I say for Python, for Terraform uses HashiCorp configuration language. That is HCL. That is what Terraform uses. So to install Terraform is actually very, very simple and straightforward. All you have to do is just, to go to the Terraform official portal. Let me just probably show you how to do that. Just going to open the web browser now. Can you see my web browser? Hello.
It's not yet up. What we are seeing is installing Terraform.
Okay, just let me share the screen again. quite a lot of screens here, so it's maybe a bit difficult sometimes. That's fine. Okay. Okay, can you see my screen now? Hello.
Yes.
Okay, good. So to install Terraform, basically what you need to do is just to go to Terraform official website, and you can have guides on how to install Terraform. You can see for Mac OS, for Linux, for for Windows and so on. And all you just have to do is just following the instruction, and and you have Terraform installed on your what's it called on your server. Now, aside that also, how do you now get to know that Terraform has been installed successfully? For you to confirm that, all you have to do is, let me go back to my presentation slide. All you have to do is just run a simple command, which is Terraform version, and with that you can you can see, okay, you can confirm that Terraform has been installed successfully. And when you run Terraform help, you can see a lot of information, you can see a lot of changes and so on like that. Now, there is what we call HCL, which I talked about the earlier time. I talked about Terraform, HashiCorp configuration language, and this language is actually, Terraform language. That is the language in which Terraform used to communicate with your infrastructure, be it on cloud or on premise, and based on this language, Terraform is able to provision different resources for you. Now, if you look at the what's it called, the image on the middle, that is the image here. For how do you get to know okay, what format, or how does how do you create an HashiCorp configuration language? It's one of the simplest languages that you can create, because basically what you need, let me try and open VS Code for you here so that you can understand me better. uh, coming, 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 coming. Just a minute. Okay, VS Code. Just a minute, please. Can you see my screen now? Can you see this VS Code? Hello?
Yes, I can
Okay,
see your
good.
VS Code.
Oh, great, great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, try to work with what's it called, the creation of, I'm trying to, explain HashiCorp configuration language for you, and how it works and so on like that. And what I mean, let me try to create a file here now under this that's Terraform. Let me say I want to create a file local.tf, for example, local.tf. Okay. By the time I open this file now, when you want to define resources in Terraform, all you need to understand is understand three things. The first thing that you need to understand is you need to know what is your, what is your block type. We have different types of block type. We have the first one, we have resources as a block type. You can see that. I'm using VS Code because if you are using VS Code will automatically understand that it's Terraform because the extension of the Terraform file is .tf. So VS Code automatically just give you that format. And if you can see this format, you can see, you can see resources here, which is a block. And the next thing that has to do here is what is the resource type. You can see suggesting a resource type for me now. Now, let me say, I want to use one of Terraform's local resource type, which is local. It is local, for example, this is like a local file, and what this resource type is used to do is just basically to create files. That's what it's used for. And now I want to give my what's called it, my resource. I want to give it a resource name. And the resource name, I can say, okay, welcome, for example. I can give it, sorry, I can give it the name welcome. Welcome, as you can see here. And then the next thing in this part is going to be your, what's it called? It's going to be your argument. What do I mean by your argument? Your argument is just, what's it called? What's the content of that resource that you want to create? You have specified that it's a resource, which is the block. We specified here that, it's the resource type is a local file, which is, one of HashiCorp's local, local resource, what's it called? Local resource type. And at the same time, I've also specified the what's called the resource name, which is welcome. So I can say, okay, now because I am using this now, you need to now bring in what you call an argument. Now, for every resources on cloud, for every resource, for every resources that you want to provision, or for every resource type you want to use, sorry, they have standard arguments that you can always attach to them. You get me? They have standard arguments. Now I am trying to create a file now. So if I am trying to create, a file, what's the name of the file I want to create? How do I want to create it? Do the file name and this one like that? So I can say, okay, the file name. Let me start with file name. I can say the file name should be introduction, for example, introduction. And sorry, that's spelled wrongly. Introduction. And I can say, okay, what's the content of the file? The content of this file should definitely be, welcome to Terraform class. Welcome to Terraform class. Can you see this now? This is just a basic, resource definition, because you're trying to create a resource. This is just how HCL work. So if you are trying to create resources on cloud, probably Azure, AWS, it's going to follow the same format. Specify your block, specify your resource type, specify your resource name, and put in some arguments. So that is just the basics. So if I run this command now, how do you run, which is another important thing. Now let me try and open a terminal now. Can you see this terminal that is just opened in VS Code? Can you see this terminal? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, if you want to now create this resource, how do we create this resource? There are basically, three syntax of commands that you should always run. Every command that you want to run in Terraform always come with, Terraform. I'll always add that, that prefix of Terraform. So you need to first of all initialize your, you need to first of all initialize your what's called it, your files that, or the directory that you want to run your Terraform what's called it, your Terraform command. So what I mean is that you basically need to run Terraform, Terraform init, and by the time you run Terraform init, what's this? Terraform is not recognized. Why? Just a minute. Try to open Git patch. Terraform version. Oh my God. Okay, I think I didn't install it here. Okay, no problem. I can probably connect to a remote server for you. Just a minute. Let me quickly connect to one of my remote server. Okay. Connect to remote server. Okay, just a minute, please. Yeah, I can connect to this.
Boss, hello, boss. Hello, boss.
Okay, I'm with you.
I don't know if I thought that version should have a kind of a hyphen in front of it. Perhaps that's
no,
why.
that one will also, whether it has hyphen, it doesn't have it. That one doesn't matter. It should also work at some time. Yeah, okay, this is my server. It's just that it doesn't recognize my command. That's it. Okay, let me try and open a file here now. Let me just say that's Terraform. I want to run the same thing here. That's Terraform. Okay. Okay. Enter a path that already is coming. Okay. No, not in my system. This is my remote server. It's connected. Okay, I'm coming. Let me create the folder in the remote server. Okay. Terraform. Okay. Open folder. Okay, this is what I want to open. Okay. Okay, good. This. Okay, it's trying to open. It's a remote server, so it may be a bit slow. Sorry for that. So enter my remote server now. I'm going to create this file, local.tf, like I said earlier. Okay, and we create our resources back, right? Resources. Sorry. Resources. I'm creating a local file. You get me? Like I told you earlier, and we specify the name of our resource. That is welcome, like I said earlier. And okay. And yeah, I talked about the file name. And I said the file name can be I said welcome or introduction. Yeah, I remember. Introduction. And the content, yeah. The content will definitely be welcome Terraform class. Yeah. So this is it. So let me open my terminal now. Does this have autosave? Okay. So let me open my terminal now. And okay, so on Terraform init now, like I said earlier. Terraform should be installed on the server. Yeah, good. So you see, I just connected to my remote server now. I am trying to create this resource, which is this file. And one thing you should notice is that I initialize, that directory. What I mean by initializing is that, We are trying to basically, download or install necessary plugins that, Terraform needs. What then by plugins? I'm going to talk about providers now. Remember, I said that, this local file resource type, can you hear me? Hello? Am I on mute? Hello? Can
Yes,
you
we
hear
can hear
me?
you, boss.
Okay.
Right on, boss.
Okay, good, good, good. Remember I said earlier that local file, which is a resource type, is one of HashiCorp's local, or let me say their own what's called it, official resources, like resource type. And because of that, you can see when it was trying to initialize, we had first of all initializing backend. I'm going to talk about this later. And there you can see when it was trying to initialize, it was saying that trying to find latest version of what HashiCorp-local, because it's going to basically pick this what do you call it, this resource type from it. You get me? And when you see here, it was saying that installing HashiCorp-local. So that is the particular provider that it needs to be able to to create these resources. And here you can see that what's installed, that HashiCorp-local. This is just basically the organization namespace, and this is the particular provider that you need. That's the version. And you can see the version is what, 2.23. It's important that you understand, how initialization works in Terraform. Now, once you see that the file and the directory has been initialized, you can see that what Terraform has been successfully initialized. Now, the next thing you need to do is to run your Terraform plan. What does a plan do? Like I am following this, please. As you can see, a plan basically, tells you that, it gives you the expected state of your of the result that you are going to create. That is, it tells you that this thing that you want to create, is it going to add new files? Is it going to delete new files? Is it going to change new files and so on like that? So let us look at it together. Terraform plan now, which is the next one. And when you run Terraform plan, did you see the output? It said Terraform will perform the following actions. You are trying to create these resources. This is interpreting this thing and telling you the expected output. He said the content of your file is going to be what? Terraform welcome to Terraform class. It tells you that file is going to have permission of what? 007. I've explained permission to you, right? And this means that what? Everybody has read write access to the file. That is the user, the group, and the owner. It also gives you what? The file name. And here it tells you that what? The ID, that is the particular identification number of that file, will be known after you run the last command, which is what? Terraform apply. Now it's not telling you, please run Terraform apply now. Now I'm going to run Terraform apply. And when I run Terraform apply, it's telling me that, are you sure you want to approve this? I said, okay, yes, please go on. And you see now, when I run my Terraform apply, I have some changes here. I can see here that, it's creating my file. And when it's created my file, it says creation complete after 0 seconds. ID, blah, 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 blah. So if you now look at something, you will see here that, this file has been created. You should have noticed, because you can see that this file was not there before I ran the command. So that is just like, a simple way at which, Terraform run. And you can see apply complete. What did it tell you? 1 file added, 0 change, 0 destroyed. So that is just like, a basic, explanation of, how Terraform works. So you can use Terraform to do a lot of things. Now, if you now want to see this, your plan with the full details now, you can then run Terraform show. Did you see? Terraform show will now give you that full information that you see. You can see here that this time the ID of the file that you created has been appended to this to the output that you have here. That is just it in simple terms. So it's important that you understand how this works. Now, another important thing, let us go back to our okay, I've explained this now. I'm just giving you this as an example to to let you know what HashiCorp, configuration language is all about, and the syntax and so on, which is just a simple example that you have just done. This is the same thing as what I just showed you. Now, in my next thing now, there's now what we call the configuration directory. In Terraform, we basically have the four basic what's called the configuration directory. We have the main.tf, we have the variables.tf, we have the outputs.tf, we have the also what we also have the provider.tf. The main.tf file is always that file where you have your major resource definition. This file that you have here now that I just created with my VS Code, this file I just created in this local file, it can be my main.tf. So I can have as many variable, I can have as many variables as possible. Let me say I want to create another file now. Let me just try to copy this same thing now and say, okay, this file is going to be, let me say, what can I give you? What can I give it? Okay, attendance. Okay, let me say attendance. So let me say list, for example. That can just say find name is attendance, attendance, and I can say, okay, who are the people that are present in class? Nurudeen is present, Dapa is present, just something simple. You get me? Just give people's name. And if I am going to do this, for example, now, and I also want to, run it, I can also use that same syntax I've used in the past to also, create the same thing and to also give me my expected output. So your main.tf file, so I can rename this local.tf now. I can rename it. Let me just try and rename it now to main.tf. You see that it has renamed, and if I want to still run the frame file, I can still do by Terraform init. You see it's already initialized already. Then you can do Terraform plan as usual. It tells me okay. Now it wants to do the same thing. Now it's adding what's Nurudeen to the file, right? So you can see this is Nurudeen this time now. Nurudeen Dako blah 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 list, and you can see Terraform apply. We definitely give you what the expected output, and we should definitely have a new file here. You can see attendance and you can see what our names here. So this is just simple example of simple explanation of what a main.tf file is. Now another file that we also have in the in the Terraform in the Terraform configuration directory is what we call the variable.tf. A variable.tf file is where you define variables that you want to use in your in your resource definition. Now, in an ideal world, especially one of the best practices is that when you are defining resources in Terraform, do not hard code it. What then by do not hard code it is that I should not. Somebody may want to still use create the same file, or let me say create another file using the same structure and so on like that. Does it mean that every time that person wants to make such changes, that person has to come here and start putting his or her hand into the main configuration and start saying, okay, I want to change this name to introduction, I want to change this name to welcome to let me say CI/CD class and so on like that. So a variable.tf is where you define all those variables that you need. Now let us try to create a variable.tf now and see how it works. Now I'm going to create a new file, variable.tf. For a variable.tf, remember it's still HashiCorp, configuration language that we are using, because anything that has to do with .tf is HashiCorp. And this time, instead of you having, here we're defining the resources, and instead of you having a resources here now, what you just have is what we call what? Variable. So your block type is variable, and you see it has already given me what? The syntax. It's because I'm using I'm using VS Code. So VS Code automatically just give you a syntax that you can use like a format, and you can just make the changes that you want to do. Now, what I am trying to do, remember, I said, okay, let me first of all delete this. I don't think I need this. I just showed you. I am trying to still reproduce this same file, but this time I don't want to use, I don't want to hard code. I don't want to put introduction here. I don't want to put this here. I want to make it, in a better way that, someone can always, edit the variables of the file and, reuse this configuration code. So let me delete this introduction because I want to work on it. I'm going to delete this file now. Introduction, delete permanently. Okay, yes, delete. Okay, good. Now I want to take this name out and replace it with something else. So if I know I want to take it out, I want to replace it with something, and I have to definitely come here and probably give a name here. What name do I have to give to my variable? Let me say, okay, I want to give my what I have here is what file name. So I want to say, okay, let me say, I want to say, okay, file name is going to be here. And what is the content of the file name here? So you automatically pick this introduction, which is the content that you have there. You pick it out and, replace it here, which is default. And description is not necessary. You get to just like an extra, what is it called, extra feature that Terraform has. So what I'm going to talk about types later. I'm going to talk about different variable types. I just want to show you example of how variables work. And default also is just it's just like what's the content, what's the default stuff that you want to use, default variable that you want to use for your for your resource provisioning. And once I do that here, I have automatically taken this out. So I have to replace this with a reference that calls this variable. So if I am going to replace this here, all I have to do is just var dot what? Var dot file name. You can see that it's already giving me because this name I have given this file is file name. So it definitely can use also var dot what? File name to reference that. The same thing I can also do for the next one here. I'm sorry. For the next one here, which is this content, I can come here and say, okay, I want to have another variable. But this time my variable is going to be content. And for contents now that I want to have here now, I'm going to say, okay, default is equal to, what do we have here? You say this is going to be welcome to Control X, welcome to what? Welcome to Terraform class. And then here I just have to, reference it back var dot what? Dot content. Now, if I run this, definitely Terraform will go back and pick this, what's it called, these variables and insert in their, what's it called, respective locations. So let's do that together. Terraform plan, you see. You can see that, you can see now, okay, now let me quickly explain something to you now. Okay, I don't want to talk about state, but let me explain something to you. One thing about Terraform is that, Terraform also has the idea of, getting previous knowledge of your infrastructure. Previous knowledge of that is the state or the state at which your infrastructure was the last time before you run a new changes. Now you can see here that initially here we defined two resources, right? And when we defined two resources, I then deleted one of the resources, like deleted the resource definition from the configuration file. And we're now trying to rerun the same file. Now Terraform noticed that it is no more missing. So Terraform is telling that because this guy is not in the configuration file, definitely is going to destroy it. You can see minus, 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 minus. And here it's going to what? It's going to add this file. That's what Terraform is doing now. And you can see 1 to add, 0 to change, 1 to destroy. So if I run my Terraform, what's it called? Terraform apply now, what it will automatically do is that what? It will delete the existing file. You can see it has deleted that file. You see that you no longer have that list here, but it has, it has created what's it called? Our file, which is what? Our welcome to Terraform class, which is the file that I wanted to do. And what I was basically explaining here is that, for your variables, you can see here that, it was able to match these variables that are defined there, was able to match it here. You can see welcome to Terraform class, you can see introduction and so on. So that is just, variable in Terraform. Now we have different variable types. We have string, we have numbers, we have boolean. You can see this was a string. We have boolean, we have we have also list also. And depending on what you call it, on your resource or the kind of resource that you want to define, we actually determine, whether you want to use a string, whether you want to use a Boolean, whether you want to use, what's it called, whether you want to use other variable types that we have. And then another important thing is that another important thing that is also another thing is that if you, okay, yes, we also have mapping. Yeah, I remember. Another important thing is that aside assigning variables this way, there are other ways in which you can also assign variables. This is what I'm talking about. You can also assign variables through interactive mode, environmental variables, like assign variables as environmental variables. You can assign variables in your variable definition file, that's your TF vars or your auto.tf file, or through command line. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go back to Terraform console now. And let me say this time, are you here? Let me say this time, I'm creating this file here now. Okay. Sorry, I'm deleting this file again. Where's the file? Oh, delete permanently. And okay, now I want to use interactive mode. So I'm going to comment this out. I'm also going to comment this out. Oh, sorry. I'm also going to comment this out now. I'm trying to use what's it called, interactive mode for my for my resource definition. And sorry, I have an alarm here saying, okay, now I have commented this out. I have not put any variable here. I did not define any variable here now. Now I want to run the same thing. Now let us come here now and run this. Let's just say Terraform. Now you can always skip what's it called, apply sometimes. I'm sorry, plan. What I mean by skipping plan is that when you skip plan, before Terraform actually run and you run apply directly, Terraform will still try to run the plan to know exactly what is going on before before it goes on with your what's it called, with the execution of your what's it called, of your resource that you want to create. Now let me just skip that now and just run Terraform apply. You did see what Terraform is telling me? It sees that that variable is missing, right? And it's telling me variable.content, the content of the file. Can you please enter a value for the content of the file? So you get, so I can say, okay, the content of the file is like, I love football, double L. Then next thing is that, what's the name of the file? You get me now? I can say the name of the file is just football.txt. You get, sorry, .txt. And it tells you this is going to be the expected output. Oh, I made a mistake in the spelling of football, not a problem. You can see it's telling you this is going to be the expected output because it has run that plan, and it's telling you, do you want to continue with the what do you call it, with the creation of the resources? I said yes, and automatically you should see a new file here. You can see football. I love football. This is a mistake actually. I love football, and it's created. You get me? So that's one of the ways you can you can interact with Terraform. Now another one I also talked about is using environment variables. Environment variables basically trying to do some export, just export some environment variables, and Terraform picks it up from your environment. We also have using command lines and what's it called, a variable definition file. I'm talking about this. And let me explain what a variable definition file is for you. A TF var. A variable definition file is just that like, okay, it's just the same variable that you have, that is the same the same variable that you have, but this time it is usually advisable to use what's it called, variable definition files when you have what's it called, multiple environments that you are working with, and you can have different variables for different environment, and you can use that to to run your what's it called, your resource creation. What do I mean? That let us do an example so that you can understand what I'm talking about exactly. Now I'm going to create a new file here now. I'm going to create, okay. Another thing about Terraform is that when you are using different variables, it's actually different when you're using any of these variables and ways of assigning variables. It's advisable that you don't give the same variable multiple definition in different places. However, there is what we call variable precedence. I'm going to talk about that later, but let me quickly explain what this means, this variable definition file. Let me create one for you and we do that together. Let me create a new file again. And let me just say daas.var.tfvars. Okay, good. Now, for a variable, or what's it called, for a variable, definition file, the syntax is different from your normal syntax. Whenever you want to use a variable definition file, most times it's advisable that you don't have any variable defined under variables.tf. Just open it, just open it down, and don't put any content, don't put anything, just just define it the way you're supposed to define it. And here you can now come in here and say that, okay, here we have, sorry, go back. Here we have variables file name, then it's just enclosed, and we have variable content and it's just enclosed. And here, if you want to use your environment variable, sorry, your variable definition file, you can just say file name is equal to let me just change my file name and say Nurudeen show. You see, and here you can say content is equal to I am Nurudeen Kamilu. Can you see this? So now I have a variable definition file. You get me? And I am trying to create these resources using a variable definition file. So if I want to use a variable, how do I now tell my Terrafrom, okay, Terrafrom, go and use that variable definition file or so on like that? To do that, you just come here, let me clear. You do Terrafrom apply dash. You are now specifying what's equal. You are specifying what's equal your variable what's called definition file that you want to use for that particular stuff. So you do var dash file is equal to, what's the name of our variable definition file? Does var dot var. Can you see this? Is this correct? Vars, yeah, correct. Okay. So you run and you see Terraform tells you that what? Yes, it's going to, because you have made changes in your environment now. So it's going to destroy some placings and create new files. Just tell it yes. And automatically Terraform creates new file for you. And you can see here that we have a new file called Nurudeen intro, and you can see my name. So that is one of the ways to use variable definition file. And you can see that using a variable definition file, you were writing on the command line that, okay, Terraform, please pick pick my variable definition file. The same way you did that, you can also do for the auto tf var. And for the command line also is just like this. Go back to this file also. Let me create this for you. Okay, for the command line now, I want to run Terraform apply for the same, for the same file, but I'm going to do it this way now. Instead of me writing, how should I put this thing? Instead of me writing variable definition file is equal to blah, blah, blah. So instead of that, I'm going to now specify those variables that I have here and give them names. You get me now? So I can say Terraform apply var is equal to what's the name of my variable file name, and tell it, okay, my file name is what's my file name? Okay, let me just find another name, intro 2, and give the second variable also, and say the second variable is content, right? Content is equal to we are here, just something simple. We are here. Did you see that? Terraform already speaks it and tells you, okay, do you want to run it? It's telling that, okay, yes, I'm replacing. So because I'm replacing, my content is going to change to what? We are here, and the file name is definitely going to change to what? Intro 2. So if you run that also, you also, have the same output. You can see here, intro 2, we are here. So these are, simple ways of, assigning variables to your, to your resource definition. And when we talk about variable, precedence in Terraform, variable precedence talks about, you can see the way they are listed here now. The one with the highest priority, that is, we always override any other thing that is here, is the command line, followed by the, the auto TF followed by this, and followed by what? And followed by this. I was actually given 1 hour, but I'm still a bit slow. No problem. I'll try and listen up. So this is just, this is the second configuration, what's called configuration file. It's one of the second major configuration files that we have for Terraform. Now, another one that we have is what we call the output.tf. Output.tf file is just, basically used to, when you want specific output, maybe you just want specific output from your Terraform execution. You get me now? You want to have specific output, and maybe you can use it for another thing. You can use this output for another thing, and so on like that. You can always use your output.tf. Now let's do an example of this also. Back to my command line also. Are you still with me, please? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
we are with you.
Okay, good. So let me know if you are missing anything or you don't understand anything. Okay, so now I am going back to my variables. I'm not using my TF var anymore. I want to use my variables back. Using my variables back. I'm using my variables back now. Okay, good. Now I want to use I want to create an output.tf and show you how it works. Okay, output.tf. Okay, good. So for my output.tf, the same syntax follows. Specify your resource type, and my resource type is what? Output. And it also gives me that that syntax. And I'm going to quickly explain the syntax to you now. This is going to just be the file name that you want. That is the name of your output. This is going to be now. Remember that when I was running my my Terraform plan, Terraform init, Terraform this the other time, you will notice that Terraform was talking about some attributes that has to do with my resource that I want to create. You were seeing, we saw the likes of content, we saw the likes of file names, we saw the likes of ID, and we saw we also saw file permission. Now imagine that I want to read the file permission of that particular file. You get me? And I want to use, okay, let me quickly go back here and let me comment this out and show you exactly what I'm talking about. If I run Terraform init now, sorry, Terraform plan, sorry. You will see here that, it tells me that it's going to give me this. Now, imagine that I am interested in, let me say, the file name, for example, sorry, the ID only, or like, I'm interested in this ID, for example. You can see two unchanged attributes is hidden. You can see unchanged attributes. What attribute that I'm talking about here is like the permission, for example. I want the permission. I want the output of of this permission. Now let's do that together. Now I'm going to say, okay, what I need is I want to know the permission, for example, permission, and here is going to be the value. What is the value that I want for my permission? Like I said, what value do I want from that output? Now, because it's a resources that that I want to create, there is what we call attribute reference. I don't know the particular name we call it. What it just does is that you want to pick something. You want to pick something, or you want to reference a particular attribute and you want to use it here. Now, what I want to reference is that, remember I created these resources. I want to create this resource. And part of the output of this resource is going to be what's called a file permission. So I want to pick that file permission. So what I have to do is that to reference that, I have to start from this because I want that to be what's equal. I want that to be my value here. So to reference that, I have to start from this place, talk about the what's it called, the resource type, followed by the resource name, and that particular attribute of that resource that I want to pick. What do I mean is that I have to say here, local file dot, the resource name that I created is what? What's the resource name? Welcome. So welcome, then dot file permission, which is what I need. File underscore permission. Permission, is that correct? Okay, double S. File underscore permission. The same way, if I am interested in the ID, all I'll just put is what? It's just ID. So I can just come here and just say, okay, dot ID. It's okay for not introduction, ID. You get me now? So, and here, okay, here is called about what we call sensitivity. Because of, sometimes when you run some Terraform commands and you do resource creation, some outputs may be sensitive. That is, you may want to, what's it called? You may not want to disclose some outputs. So, because when you run this, okay, let me make this false, for example, and I will show you what I mean. Let me make this false. False. This is just a description, and there's what we call some conditionals. Some conditional, you can see that, okay, only run this output when this resource is created. You get me now? This is just a conditional, but I also do not need this here. Just different use cases depending on what you want to call it, or the resource that you want to also create. Now let me quickly show you this. Now I want this. I've changed this to ID. Sorry. ID. Okay, good. Now I want Terraform to give me the ID of the file I want to create. You get me now? I want Terraform to give me the ID of that file, and this is going to be the value I want it to show me when I make any changes in my what's called resource creation. So let us do that together. Clear? I want you to take note of this now. Terraform apply. It says, okay, we're going to change this to this, going to change this to this, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Do you see any changes in this output? This time you can see that after resource have been completed, you can see apply completed. You can now see that what the output is here, and you can see the ID separately what showing below. You can now see that what file ID is equal to this. So sometimes you may just be interested in that ID and you just pick it up. So, and here is this clear. Let me just clear it for you. And you can just say if Terraform output, and you can see the outputs that you have here, file ID. Now, in a case where I make this sensitive true, what Terraform will do is that instead of it showing me what's it called, the value below, that is when we after running the apply command, it will just say that this is sensitive. So it is until you run your Terraform output that you can see it. Now let us do the same thing. Let me just try and run the same thing now. Terraform apply. Yes. You see, it noticed that I made changes to my output.tf. That's the only way I made changes. So did you see now? What did you see here? File ID what? Sensitive. So it is because of the fact that what we have tried to specify that what it's sensitive information that is contained in this place. So it's not going to give it as the what. It's not going to display it after executing your Terraform apply command. So that is just that is just a brief about Terraform output. Now another one is provider. Let me go back to my presentation slide. Provider is just it's just plugins. It's just plugins that Terraform used to to interact with any infrastructure that you want to use. Take, for example, AWS, Azure, and so on like that. And you can see here that what you call it, an example of a provider. You can see provider.tf, which is just a normal file name, and you can see in the syntax Terraform. You can see require which provider is a local provider, because the file that we have been creating since is what's it called, it's a local file. So that's why you can see that Terraform is using what's it called, it's using what's it called it, the local provider. And at the same time, you can also see what's it called it, you can also see the sorry you can also see the what's it called, you can also see the type of what's it called it, the version of what's it called it, of the provider that you are using. You get me? So this is just an example of what's it called it, of the way you can you can use providers in what's it called it, in Terraform. And another way you can also notice which Terraform provider are you using and so on like that is when you come here, you want to know, okay, which providers do you have. You can just run Terraform provider. Sorry, you can see now Terraform providers, and you can see here that it's telling you that what here in your configuration you have this provider, and I've explained to you. This is just the organization name, and this is the resource, the particular provider you are using, and it's telling you, okay, by state also you have what's called it, this provider also in your state. I'm going to talk about state files in the what's it call it, in our next what's it called it, in our next presentation, that is as we progress. Now I have just given you a simple way of a simple analysis of what Terraform is about, the configuration directory, the HashiCorp configuration language, and so on. Now let's try and work on a task that has to do with using Terraform to provision cloud resources, because I know many of you will be interested in that. So here I'm going to try to what's it called it, to create an S3 bucket using Terraform, and we see how it works. We see some of the what is it called it, some of the things that has to do with using X3, using Terraform. Now the fact that we want to create X3 buckets automatically means that, sorry. So the fact that we want to create S3 bucket automatically means that what's it called, that we are going to use AWS provider, and at the same time we need to know what's it called, we need to know the necessary what's it called, the necessary how do I put it, we need to know the necessary structure, or the necessary way in which we define our what's it called, our resource that has to be what's called, that is to be created. So let us create a new folder and work on these tasks together. Let's just create a new folder and says exercise. Let's just do that. Example. Okay, example is good. Example example. Okay, good. And under this, I'll create a new file in the .tf. I will also create what's it called, main.tf, create my provider.tf. I'm just using everything that I've told you earlier, just creating those files, create variable.tf, and which other one is left? Okay, I think these are just the resources that I want to the files that I needed. Let me close unnecessary ones. Okay, example. So now we want to create X3 using what's it called, Terraform. Now, how do you know the structure? How do you know everything that has to do with creating S3, blah, blah? You don't need to stress yourself. It's actually very simple and straightforward. What do I mean is this now? There is what we call Terraform registry. Terraform registry is basically AWS, I said AWS, Terraform's is a place where we have, lots of documentations and on how to use, Terraform for different providers, and, how to specify some of their configuration syntax. So here you will see how to, how to create a provider plugin, how to, documentations for creating resources and so on. So we are going to do that together now. And let me try and open web browser again. Okay, now you can see my web browser now. Let's just look for Terraform registry. Now this is Terraform registry, and on Terraform registry we have different providers, and they are categorized into what's it called? They are categorized into three, if I'm very correct. We have what we call the Terraform official provider. Let me just browse provider and show you what I'm talking about. We have official providers, we have partners, we have community. For every Terraform official provider, you always see it as official providers. Now, AWS, Azure, okay, this is what you need to recognize. When you see this, you will definitely like this. You can see it's official. You can see official here. That is official Terraform, what's called providers. You can see by Terraform, by HashiCorp. Now, we have partners also. Partners, partner provider are actually written and maintained by, third-party companies, you get me? And basically, they are used to, like, to manage their own resources. I think one of the partner providers we have is, I don't know, I think MongoDB, I'm not sure. Yeah, MongoDB, you can see. MongoDB is partner. It's a partner provider. You can see also partner. And we have the last one, which is what we call the community providers. Community providers is just, me and you, different members of the Terraform community that are trying to, create a lot of things, you get me? So these are like the basic three, the basic three categories, you get me, that we have for providers. Now we are trying to create AWS resources. We are trying to create an S3, and we are trying to use, AWS provider for this. Now let's click on this and see how it works together. Now, the first thing when you come here, you only see an option that is called use provider. This just gives you that syntax that you need to to initialize that directory. So we are going to use exactly what we have here to create this tag. So I'm going to copy this now. So I go to my provider.tf and I paste. Is that correct? Now, another thing that you can see here is that you can see I have explained I have explained this syntax to you before. I have explained that, this is the way you actually, specify the required provider for Terraform. And when it comes to your provider itself, under provider, which is this sort type, there's some configuration options here now. Because you want to deploy resources into the cloud, there's some basic things you need to do. Definitely, you need to communicate with your, you need to communicate with your cloud environment, and AWS allows you to use, access keys to do that. So definitely, you know that you need what we call access key. Access key. And you also need the secret of the access key, right? That's the secret key. And at the same time, you need to also specify your region. These are like, the basic, the basic stuff that you need. So for my region now, I'm using EU Central 1-1. I have my access key, and I'm going to copy that. Don't worry, if you see my access key, I'm going to revoke it after this class. A big deal for me. And just a minute, I'm going to copy my access key here. But before then, let me quickly log into my AWS account and show you. Okay, no worries. I can do that later. Okay, back here. I'm going to put this here now. This and my access key ID. I'm going to revoke it. Don't worry. So you can pick it. Okay. Now, it's not a good practice. Another thing that it's not a good practice to put, access key and access key ID when you're into your what's called if your configuration file when you're trying to trying to create resources. Because we tell you most times, use it as what's it called environment variables. It's one of the best practices, you get me, for security reasons and so on like that. So it's not a good practice, but because of this is just what's it called a session just to show you how it's been done. That is why I am doing this. So I'm going to use this now. So that's it, and close. Okay, I've closed that. I have created my provider.tf. Now the next thing is now what's it called? It's my main files that I want to that I want to work with. Now, because I want to create an S3 bucket, because go back to our task, this is it, create an S3 bucket, blah blah blah. Now we need to specify what's it called, the resource block and so on like that. So we do resource, and trying to create AWS S3 bucket. And what is the resource name? Let me just say daas bucket, for example. The daas bucket. And okay. And now you specify what's called the arguments that we need. Let's say, okay, what's going to be the bucket name? Now I'm going to go more advanced because I talked about variables already. So I'll just say variable dot bucket name, because remember I told you we don't need to add code. You get me? Dot bucket name. Another thing is always good to always, one of the best practices is always train tags. Try to always tag your resources that you that you provision on cloud. It's one of the best practices. So I'm saying the name of my bucket now is still what's it called? Is still variable. Sorry, I say variable var dot bucket name. Sorry, bucket name. And which other tags? Okay, let me say the project now. For example, let me just say project is daas project. So let's say var dot project. Okay, this is my bucket that I want to create. Now, don't forget that in every bucket that you have, you need to have an object. You get me now? You need to have an object for what's you call for that bucket. You get me? That is what is going to be in that bucket. So let's create another resource, which is called resource S3 buckets this time now. So it's going to be AWS S3 object. Sorry, so buckets. We're creating an object now. And let's give that resource name. Let's just give it object. Yeah, simple. This is simple. I'm sorry. And here I'm going to talk about the buckets. Now, let me explain something to you now. I have created this definition, the resource definition that you have here is for bucket creation, right? But now I want to create an object to put inside that bucket. Now, because I want to create an object to put in that bucket, that means I need to reference this bucket name here so that AWS can easily see it and see that, okay, sorry, so that Terrafrom can easily see that, okay, this is the particular bucket where I want you to put it into. Now, all this configuration, blah, 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 it's not as if, I got it often and so on like that. It's because I'm used to it. And everything is always here for you in your, in your Terraform registry. So if you type here, if you come to documentation here now, this is documentation for everything that has to do with AWS. Let us just type X3 here. You will see, okay, this X3 buckets, and it tells you these resources helps you to provide provision X3 buckets. And there are, let me see, lots of examples. Now, there are some things that you need to get used to in this place. There's what we call argument reference and what we call attribute reference. Argument reference, remember I told you everything here is an argument. You get me? An argument I want to put, and the output is going to be about your attribute reference. So your argument reference definitely is going to be an explanation of what is expected in that place. You get me? So when we click on argument reference now, it's telling you that the following arguments are supported: buckets, optional, but the name it basically means the name of the bucket. I have given my bucket here. You can say I've defined this bucket and given the bucket name. Then the next thing here is that the next thing here is, okay, aside that, You can see ACUs, that is access control list. You can see some other things that okay, this has been depreciated. You can see CORS rule, that is cost origin resource sharing, and so on like that. You can see life cycle policy and so on. So I also try to create what you call it tags. You get me? Just to just to be able to to tag my resource that I want to create. Now, aside that, also you can see attribute reference here. Attribute reference is the output, like those output that you get me, from your resources. That what are the attributes that comes with it? Now, when you create a bucket, the following comes with it: an ID, an ARN, a bucket domain name, bucket region name, and so on like that. So I can always reference this attribute when I want to create other resources. Now I want to create an object to put inside this bucket. So because I want to create an object that will be put inside this bucket now, I have to reference the attribute, which is going to be what? The ID, which is the name of the bucket here. Because if I can reference this attribute, that means this object that will be created will automatically be put inside that bucket. Now, let me say, okay, the bucket I want to use this is going to be what now? Because I want to reference it from this place. Like I told you, you have to give these details back. That is the resource type, the resource name, and that particular attribute that you want to reference. So my resource type here is what? AWS S3 bucket dot the resource name, dash bucket, and the attribute that I want to reference is what? The ID. Okay, sorry, Ctrl Z, the ID. Do you see that? That is what? That is for my bucket. Now, what do I want to put inside this bucket is going to be like a key. I'm going to probably upload the file here now so that we can put the file inside this bucket. Just I'll do that now, don't worry. So it's going to be a key. Okay, let me quickly try and push a file to that server. Just a minute, I'll do that in the background. That's Terrafrom, right? Okay. That's Terrafrom. And sorry, I'm coming. Just trying to find an object to put there. Just maybe find a random image and so on like that, and just push it there. Okay, so I have pushed this image here now. This image is I have pushed this image here. This is the image that I pushed here. So I have pushed this image here, and I want to push this image, what you call it, to my I want to upload it on X3. So now I come in here and I specify the key, which is the contents I want to push there, and is what? TF111 x.png. Okay, this is good. And yeah, this is this is the bucket creation, and this is what we call this is the bucket creation, and this is the object creation. Another important thing is that when you are trying to also create what you call it, a bucket also at the same time, it's always advisable that when you're creating your buckets, please remove public access, that is access control list. So it's important that we also try to create an access control for what's called for the bucket. So let's click another resources called access control, and just do AWS X3 buckets. But this time I'm working with what we call it S3 buckets access control. That's ACU. Yeah, and here now I have what's it called it? Let me just say S3 access. That's because I'm trying to create an access control list. And here I come in here and define what I want to define. Define it at the same time, trying to say, okay, what bucket do you want to create this access control for? So this is the bucket that I want to create. So I'll just copy this now. Just copy this and put this here. And at the same time, I specify, okay, what access do I want to give it? So here I want it to be private. I don't want anybody to, I want it to be a private bucket. And yeah, this is fine. Now, remember that, I have created some variables here. I have to, go to my variable.tf and also try to define these variables. So I have to go here and define every one of these guys one after the other. Basically, they are just two, I think. Yeah. So here we come here now, variable, and what's the voice known bucket name? Bucket, sorry, bucket name. And all I need is just this guy, and then it is, and then it is also. So my bucket name is I said I was going to give it a name. Remember, I think I said that's bucket, or let me say, okay, let me say test that's, let me just say test that's bucket BKT. It gets me just something simple. And yes, I come, that's sorry, it has to be in quotes. That's another important thing. Okay. And here also, I come here also at the same time, variable, create another variable. And okay, let me just copy this and make it very fast. And what's the next variable I want to create? That's the project's name. You get me? So I can just say project, and the project should be like that's proj. You get me? Like that's project, that's project. So these are just like, the basic variables that I think that I need for this. And yeah, this is the basic variables, any other thing missing. So we are going to now try to initialize this directory and then try to, create this object, what's it called, this resource using Terraform. Now, before that, clear. And now I go to directory LX, right? So I go to directory CD example, right? So clear now. Yes, you can see my 3 files here and my image. So I can just do Terraform init as usual. Now I'm going to give you a trick now. Let me give you a trick of something you need to do, Terraform init. So I'll basically try to initialize my directory. Okay, you can see init successful, right? Clear now. Now you can see here that when I was doing my variable definition and resource definition, it's not a neat code, you get me? One of the best ways that, one of the extra features of some of the commands that Terraform gives you now, Terraform allows you to format your code to make it, presentable and nice. So if I want to format this now and make it well arranged and so on like that, all I have to do is just come here, run Terraform format command, Terraform FMT format, and look at the changes in my line, especially observe line 2, 3, 4, 5. Observe what happens now. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Did you see what happened?
Yes.
Okay, good. So basically it has tried to what? Rearrange it and make it make sense. You get me? Just everything makes sense, the equal signs, they're in the same line and so on like that. Good. So now another good command that you can always use in Terraform, that not all the time you just run Terraform apply, Terraform create and so on like that. It's always good to sometimes validate the resource that that you want to create, to validate that, okay, yes, this configuration file, will it create exactly what I want it to create? So you can always run Terraform. It's one of the best practices. I'm talking about the practices now. Terraform validate, and Terraform validate will validate your resource. You see, configuration is valid. That is to tell you that, Terraform on that your what's it called, the way you have defined your variables is okay, and it's valid, so you are good to go. Now do not forget that in case my my access control or something like that, let me say, take for example, I have created a bucket name, and one of the features of AWS S3 bucket is that it's actually a global name. You get me? There is no bucket with two names. You get me now? And I try to give a name for a bucket that has been created by someone before. If you run such a command, it will flag it back for you that somebody has created this kind of bucket. Find a different name for it. Terraform validate will not show you that. Terraform validate will only validate based on what you have here. That, okay, this guy is good, though. Go on with your configuration. You can see configuration is valid. You understand me? So that's what Terraform validate does. So now let's go on and run Terraform. I'll just go and run apply now, straight apply. Now, another thing is this now, if I run Terraform plan, let me show you something again. Sorry, Terraform plan. I will show you something now. If I run Terraform plan, it's to show me that I do not have an output file. Look at this. You didn't use out option to save this plan. So Terraform cannot guarantee to take exactly this action if you run Terraform apply now. Now, one of the best practices also of using Terraform is that, whenever you are running, whenever you are running your Terraform plan, always try to give an out plan. So with that, you can always have a reference for something. You can always have something as a reference. Okay, this is the reference of my out plan that I run, and this is what's expected. So with that, you can always, so it's one of the good practices when you are doing what's called Terraform. So now I have to come back here and run Terraform plan, apply now, and create my resources. So Terraform apply now, apply, and it tells me, do you want to go on, yes or no? You see, do you want to continue this? Yes. Now, before that, you can see the state of my, my resource that I want to create. Let me quickly explain it to you. Let me quickly explain this to you. It's quite a lot. Now, the plan file that I ran told me that the following changes will be made, right? Your S3 buckets will be created. This is going to be the resource type. The access control is going to be known later, but it's going to be the what? The name of the bucket, test bucket. And all this zone ID, everything will be known because there are a lot of things. There are really, really a lot of things that has to do with what's called bucket creation, but I just took it in a simple way. You can also see the tag that I've assigned to this also. The tag will also be given to my resources. And this is cost rule. I didn't specify any cost rule, so it's not there. And which other thing do we have here also that I also try to specify? Okay, I think that's just the major thing I specified. You can see server-side encryption. I didn't specify this versioning because I can always, create versioning, like, okay, enable versioning for my bucket and so on like that. So these are some of extra features that will be done, but I didn't do this, so it's not going to give me an output for that. Now you can also see that, for my bucket, what is it called, the access control. So you can see that what the access control is also what's private, you get me? And specify that. And lastly, my object is going to be what? Going to be this, and the object is going to also automatically pick that, what you call it, that private policy that has been specified, and it's going to create under the same bucket, and it's going to be the image that we're going to upload. So let us click yes and see now what happens. So you can see creating buckets automatically created everything within 1 second. So you can see 3 added, 0 change, 1 destroyed. So let me try and log into my AWS console now. Sorry, I don't want to log in your face. I don't want you to steal my password. AWS. Okay. Trying to log into my console. Just give me some minutes. Again, I want to show you the resources that we've created now. Just a minute, please. Okay. So this is my AWS. Can you see my web browser? Hello, can you see my web browser? Okay, so I've logged into my AWS console now. Come to X3 and let us see the resource that we've created. So you can see daas test BKT created 26th of what? Of November. This was the bucket I created some time ago when I was taking you on AWS console some time ago. And you can see the time also, which is the same time that we are in right now. So if you click on that bucket now, let us see, because we didn't just create bucket, we also created a bucket object. You can see the image. This is the image that we attached to that bucket. You get me? That was the second thing that we did. And the third thing we also did was try to remove public access. So let us look at what what's it call it, the bucket permission, and see. You can see block all what? Block all public access. So this is just a simple example on how you can create objects on Terraform, resources using Terraform to any of what's it call it, any of what's it called of your cloud infrastructure and so on like that. So we have just worked on this example. Now I want to talk about what we call Terraform states, and what do we have now? If you have noticed in this place, let's go back here. Let's go back here. Let's go back here. If you have noticed in this place now, before that, don't forget, I told you can always check our provider now. Remember that we have put in AWS provider now, right? So Terraform providers, you should see our AWS provider now. Do you see now? Do you see our AWS provider? Before we were working with local, remember, but we changed directory, we created a new file, and you can see that we have what? AWS provider here now. So that's another thing. Now, let me go and talk about what's it called, Terraform state. Terraform state is basically stores what's it called, the state of your configuration, you get me? And if you have noticed before, when I created the file, I created just three things. I created main.tf, I created provider.tf, I created variable.tf, and I exported what? I imported this image, you get me? And but right now we have some other things here, some other things. So let me explain some of these things for you. This is a state file, and a state file basically stores the state of your file. So what I mean is that it is what Terraform, you can see, this is everything that we have created. Everything that we have created, that object that we've created, this is the details of everything we have done in the state file. So here you have all the details of what you have. You can see here that we have the version of the, what's it called, of the plugin. You can see that the mode is managed. I'm going to talk about some things here. You can see mode is managed. You can see the bucket name, the provider. You can see the ARN of the bucket. You can see the domain name of the bucket. You can see permission, full control. You can see every information about what we created. The same thing that you have on AWS. You have everything here in this configuration language. So this is actually what Terraform references whenever I make any changes. If I try to make any changes to this configuration language, this is what Terraform will reference and know that, am I making a change, or I am making an addition, or I want to destroy what is existing before. So this is basically what Terraform references whenever you want to do that. And automatically, or let me say by default, your state file is always saved on what's you call it, on your local system, which is my remote server. You can see I SSH into one server here, and I what's it called, I am running it there. So it's going to be automatically saved in there, which is what I am showing you right now. And however, based on practice or standard practice, it is advisable that you always store your state file remotely. What do I mean by storing your state file remotely? Imagine that you are working for a large organization. I am working, and let me say two other people in this meeting are working for the same organization, and we are now trying to create what do you call it, to create resources into the cloud. You get me? We are trying to create what do you call it, resources into the cloud. Now, if we don't have a remote back end or a remote state, you get me? Everybody, there will be conflict. There will be conflict because I will create something, and you almost create the same thing, and we just disrupt the whole infrastructure, which is one of the reasons why it's good to always have what we call a remote, what do you call it, a remote state, so that whenever you are provisioning your resources, you can always reference that state file, that okay, Terraform will use this state file, and Terraform basically point use that remote state. That's number one. Number two is that, okay, let us now say that, okay, yes, we have a remote state. Okay, for your remote state, at the same time, before I go into that also, for your remote state, you can use any remote stage. You can use S3, you can use Azure, you can use Google Cloud Storage, you can use HashiCorp, Terraform Cloud to save. Some people even save on what do you call it on GitHub. You get me? But I advise people to always save on what some of these cloud providers like S3, like Azure, like GCP also. It's it's more advisable to do that. Another best practice is that when you are working with state file also, always enable what we call versioning on your bucket or wherever you are saving them into. With that, automatically automatically you can revert in case there is what we call some unwanted changes in your what's you call it in your infrastructure. Now another important thing is what we call now let me now say that okay, we have a remote state, and for our remote states now we have many developers, or let me say many DevOps engineers are working on the same what's it called, the same state file. They want to create the same resources. The moment, if we are two in number now, the moment I am the first person that runs Terraform init, Terraform apply and plan, automatically Terraform locks that state. That's what we call Terraform state locking. And when it locks, it gives you some hash. I don't know. I don't know how to do it. I think it's a hash configuration. You can see these hashes. You can see these hashes that you can see here now. This hashes is then what it actually gives you. So the moment that state is locked, you cannot, what do you call it? Another person cannot provision a resources until you are done what you are doing, and the person can then be able to provision. So that's one of the ways of avoiding conflict when it comes to what resources provisioning on cloud. I think that answers it. Now there are some, the set time is up, so I'll just quickly pick up another thing again. There are some other things that Terraform also have. Imagine an example. Imagine that imagine that we have a resources already that has been provisioned outside Terraform, because if you read these states now, you can see manage, mode is manage. Imagine the resources that you have that has been provisioned outside Terraform. For example, let me say, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to show too much example. Let me say this bucket, this daas bucket. This daas bucket was created on AWS CLI. If you remember our AWS class, and this bucket was created in 2019, so in November 19, and was not created, by Terraform, right? I can always imagine, I imagine that I now need to update some configuration on this bucket. For example, I want to update a configuration on this bucket. Let's say, okay, for this particular bucket now, I want to give it some policy, some access policy. Sure, you get me now? Maybe I want to block some people and deny some people and something like that. There is what we call data as data source. You get me? Just like the way you have resources, you have this. We also have what we call data. Data basically allows you to do, some of these simple things. Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. Let me just type data now. You should give it to me in the syntax. Okay, it's not giving it to me, but not a problem. Now, the same way you have your your resource definition, you can also have for for data. Also, the same syntax also goes for the two of them. But this time, what you know that since it's this bucket that I want to make changes on, so I'm still going to use the same syntax. I'm going to use AWS S3 bucket, specify the name I want Terraform to associate that bucket with, and after that, at the same time, I can also specify the bucket name, the bucket ID. Once I save that as a data, then I can now create a new resource to update the policy on such a bucket. You get me? This is another way of trying to tell Terraform that I created these resources outside Terraform, but I want to update some changes on these resources. Now, that doesn't mean that Terraform will take over the management of such resource. If you want Terraform to take over the management of a resource that you provision outside Terraform, then you have to import. There is a command called import, Terraform import. You use it to import that your what's it called, that your resource that you are provisioned outside Terraform into Terraform to be in a manage mode by in Terraform. And to use import also is this the same resource configuration setting, but after this, what you just have to run is just what Terraform import. Now, a final one I'll quickly just talk about also is important one is module. Modules is one of the best and let me say industrial and professional way of using Terraform. Modules is very, very simple, and that's why I just have this diagram here to quickly explain it to you. When we talk about modules, we are basically talking about list of files, like list of files, like all this your what's it called, your tf dot kinikon dot kinikon dot kinikon. They are just different files. So when you have pack all these files together in one place, you can call them what's called a module. You can see here that we have VPC, we have PC2, you can see var.tf, we have instances.tf. All these configuration files can be called a module. And when they want to, let me say, okay, in an environment, I created a module that has those two stuffs. We have var.tf, that's network configuration for VPC. We have instance also for what's it called, for EC2. Okay, sorry, same time is up. Okay. And I want to provision these resources in my dev environment, for example. Because of the fact that, because one of the best one of the advantages of what's called of Terraform is reusability. Somebody to be able to reuse your code without stressing yourself and so on like that. So if you want to do this, all you have to do is just, because I want to provision in dev, I can just create a a new main.tf in dev and just automatically pick these files. I don't need to come and start saying creating all these stuffs again, all this resource dot this, resource dot that. All I just have to do is just what? Specify the module. Let me say, okay, this is the module. I'm going to give you the syntax for the module. Specify the module, specify the source, and give some optional, some optional attributes that are necessary. But however, most times you may not need to create a module, because Terraform, the fact that it was an open source at the same time has allowed people to make a lot of improvements. So many of the modules that you need are on cloud. You can easily pick up a module and it will do exactly what you want without you stressing yourself, without even you knowing the content. You get me? Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. Let me open back the cloud again. Let me go to Terraform. Let's start Terraform module, the internet, and show you what I'm talking about. I'm not creating a module. You can see everything is under Terraform registry, and you can see these are modules for AWS, VPC, AWS, this, AWS, EKS, AWS, this, RDS, and so on like that. Now, let me say I want to use for AWS, for example, and let me just look for a better one, S3. Okay, just like an example that we did. Now, this will be the best way to explain it to you. For every module, there's always what? A submodule. A submodule is that, okay, what do you want? Do you want S3 object? Do you want S3 this? Do you want S3 that? Now, how do you use this module? See it here. If I want to create a module, you need two things. You need the source and the version of the module that you want to create. So when you have this, there are now some options that they call input, output, dependency, and so on like that. Input means that, what are the optional things that you can attach to this guy? If I run this thing now, S3, blah, blah, blah. Now, what are the inputs that I can add to it? I can add, network access control. I can add, inventory policies. I can attach policies to it, and so I can add bucket and so on like that. These are, different inputs that you can attach to this module. Now, the same thing if you want to use an object, you can see an already created module for what's called X3 object. You get me? And for that X3 object module now, at the same time, you can see the inputs that I'm talking about here. You are telling that, okay, for that object, what you only need to do is just the same thing that we created here. Please note that, the same object that we created here. So if I want to create the same object now, all I just need to do is using modules is just to take this command, copy it, because it's official Terraform module. Just copy this command. When I copy this command and just say, okay, just say, okay, this object that I'm creating now, I'm just going to specify the name of the bucket, which is a string, you get me? and not all the time required. You can see required, and at the same time, what do they call it? Specify some content and tags and keys and so on like that. So that is just ways on which you can use what do you call it? Terraform modules. It's one of the best things to use, and I tell people don't waste your time creating modules when you already have modules that that are created on what do you call it on Terraform registry. So that is where I will be ending it up for today. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Any question?
Thank you so much, Nurudeen. Did I have a question?
Okay, please go on and ask your question.
Okay. All right, my first question is regarding the file and naming convention, like the main.tf, the out.tf, provider.tf, and the main.tf. So by default, must I use the naming convention as it is, or can I just give it any name? And Terraform will be able to understand what file it is, whether it's variable, whether it's provided by going into the content of the file.
Yeah, sure. Everything that we have here can be in just one file. Everything. You can remember when I was using the first example, I just created local.tf. I didn't call it main.tf. I didn't call it this. I just created local.tf. But the way Terraform is able to identify is based on the what do you call it, the block type. And I've told you they have different types of block type. We have modules, we have resources, we have variables, we have outputs, we have provider, and so on. So what the Terraform needs to know is that what is the block type that you are specifying here. So the moment you specify, the moment it is able to pick what you call it, the block type, it automatically knows that okay, this is what you call it, this is a variable. This is what you call it, is the output. This is the provider. I hope you understand me. So everything can be in just one line, one single file.
Oh.
And the most important thing for you to know that the Terraform file is just what the extension, which is .tf.
Okay. Okay, another thing I want to ask is, now maybe for instance, I used a console, either AWS console, Azure console to provision a resource. Now, after doing the provisioning, I downloaded the JSON template. Is it possible to use that JSON template and maybe use Terraform to maybe provision many more resources of that same kind, but different names?
Yeah, in such a case like that now, Terraform is not is what's it called is in HCL, you get me? And then the HCL more looks like having YAML format. You can see, as you can see on my screen. So first of all, you need to be able to convert that your file into YAML. That's one. Another thing that I also advise is that when you copy that file, that template that you have for that file, when you copy it and you download it, don't forget that it is hard coded. You get me now? So you will need to, at the same time, rewrite, or let me say, modify such a configuration file in such a way that you can have your variables, be variables for such a file, so that for anybody that wants to reuse that file, that person can just go into the variables and say, okay, these are the variables that I want to use for this new file. Let's say, for example, you created an EC2 server, for example, and for your EC2 server, you want to now create a new one using the first one that I have, the first templates, let me put it that way. So in such a way like that, definitely the name is going to change, the CPU size, that is the instance class, and so on like that. So you can call all those, special variables, because if you don't do it that way, if you run exactly the same file, it will provision exactly what is there before for you with the same name and so on like that, which may be a problem in your infrastructure.
Problem.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. I get that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think there is no other question, right? So that should be all on my end. Thank you. And I also observed that there is no much attendance today, and but it's not a problem. We are rounding up. However, it's important that we try to be available for all our classes, even though this is towards the end of the session. So I don't know if Oluwaseun has something to say, because I have some announcement. Hello, Oluwaseun. Okay, I think It's busy. Okay. As we are rounding up our what's it called?
Go
As
on,
we
no,
are okay. Go on.
No,
Hello.
you can take the announcement. You can take the announcement.
Okay. As you all know, next week Saturday is going to be our last, what's it called, our last session, and it's going to be let me say the grand finale of our program um program, and it's important that you all try to be available as much as you can. However, before that, we still have some classes that we have to take, which is going to hold on Wednesday. Um, we are going to take, CICD using, Octopus Deployer and, Team City, because CICD is one of the, the core tools. If you cannot create a pipeline as a DevOps engineer, then you are no DevOps engineer. So it's important that, you try to be available for this class on Wednesday by 9 p.m. We are going to have that session. And at the same time, I believe that, Dakwa gave you, what do you call it? Dakwa gave an assignment on in his last class, I think was on Kubernetes. So please, team's presentation is going to be by tomorrow, Sunday, 6 p.m. for the teams that have not, presented the what's it called, the presentation. So it's important that you do that. And for this class, I am actually not going to give out any tags. However, you can always try to, to create different resources on cloud. You can always reach out to me if you need, any assistance, and probably you try to create a text EC2 instance, attach users data and so on to it. So it's important that you learn to do that. Then at the same time on Saturday, 9 a.m., we are going to have what's it called, our closing, and it's going to be an opportunity where you get to also share with us what have you learned from this program, and also which was your best class, your worst class, which topic are you finding interesting, what is your plan, after the program. And at the same time, we also on our end is also going to try to follow up with you, and because we believe that it was just 6 months of class back to back classes and so on, that has never been easy. So there will still be opportunities for you to to develop in some other areas, which we will talk about some of these things in our what's called in our next meeting, which is sorry, on Saturday, not our next meeting, because we are meeting tomorrow and on Wednesday. So I think that's all the information I have for us tonight. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you for being available. Do have a wonderful evening, and bye for now.
Bye, guys.